opportunity to ask your question to Chiara. Okay, anyway, so I've got some questions regarding, yes?
I'm not sure how I raised my hand. Do you see my hand?
Okay, great. Please come forward. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for the wonderful talk. I would like to know how were the resonator excited in the haptic materials?
Yeah, you're right. I left it out for time constraints, but we actually tested, oops, maybe this is the right slide. So we tested a number of different actuators, and they included pretty much anything you can fit on a wrist. That included the piezoelectric actuators, like the one you see here. That included even small loudspeakers and triaxial actuators. And the truth is that in this case, the piezoelectric system that you see here, it's like this is really the full device. You're looking at the entirety of it. We're good enough, and the reason being that you don't need very large forces, you don't need enormous displacement, because these materials would work in resonance. All you need is to excite the resonance, and the oscillations of the spiral cantilevers, basically, that you see. Let me see if I can point at it. These transparent cuts here are actually sufficient to provide this sensation. So you can use different actuators. We liked this one because of the form factors. But by the way, the paper that I cited for this work contains all of the actuator analysis with the different trade-offs in energy use and amplitude and force obtained.
I am curious if they will couple to a sound wave, a 3D sound wave, which...
You mean without contact?
Without contact, yes.
You know, that's a good question. It's actually a really good question. We haven't tried non-contact actuators. All the actuators were glued in the middle of these haptic systems, either here, like you see in this slide, or I don't know if I can jump back. Let me see if I can be a little bit more effective. There we go. Or in this design, it was just attached, like a little button attached in the middle, so in the 9th pixel, if you like. But actually, it's a good point. We haven't looked into it, but it may be possible. I think the question would be how much energy, what amplitude of the sound waves do you need to get them to excite the resonances? And I don't know, but it's a good point.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can I, Sebastian?
Yes, of course, please.
Chiara, on one of your slides, you show the shift of band gap for a piezoelectric metamaterial, basically for a phononic crystal, and you get something like few percent. If you can just go back to the...
Are you talking about the RF devices, the on-chip RF, this one?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we see everything. I think just if you could go back to the PowerPoint. We see your screen now. I mean, we see all the... Oh.
How did that happen? Okay, let me try that. This?
And now we see your face. And...
Guys, I didn't touch anything, I promise.
Maybe just stop sharing and share it again.
So you should share again your screen.
Okay, wait, let me see how to do this. It just did it by itself. I didn't touch anything. Okay, wait.
We have not seen anything confidential on the screen, so it's fine.
Okay, it's okay. Wait, can you see my screen now?
No, we see you.
We see all of us, actually.
Oh, very nice.
Share your screen again. I cannot.
Yeah, no, I get your point. The problem is that my WebEx window has left me. It's just not there anymore. Hold on. Completely gone. There we go.
You should have a little icon for WebEx.
Probably on the top of your screen, something like a camera that is a bit orange.
Here we are.
Now
yes, good.
There we go. Does it work now?
Okay,
yes.
We see the PowerPoint.
Good. So
awesome.
The slide 16.
You want to go to the slide 16 over here? There
yes.
We go.
Yeah, that one. So basically, with
go ahead.
Yeah, so the without electrodes. So basically, you switch on the electrodes, and you have the bottom part. So this is a shift of let's say something like 10%. How do you explain it in a sense of, let's say, effective parameter? How do you these electrodes are changing the properties of the material?
So there's two things, and let me maybe explain it using these the geometry of the structure, because it's probably going to be more explanatory. So number one, the electrodes are this yellow area. So this is the gold chromium electrodes you see on top of this suspended membrane region. And those, of course, are just the fact that they are there are affecting the mechanical response of the suspended membrane, because they add material, they add mass, they add stiffness to the structure. In addition, when we use the electrode and add this gate voltage, you see it here, this what is it called, the VT, tuning voltage, you are causing, according to this kind of mechanical description, you're causing a pre-stress on the membrane. So the membrane effectively either deflects towards the base gate. This is suspended, right? It's this disc suspended on top with the electrodes, and it curves, and this pre-stress is shifting the effective properties of the resonance. And actually, I don't think I showed it in these slides, but we can plot, in fact, superimpose these shifts. Oh, no, actually, it is in the slides right here. We can superimpose the simulations. Those are the solid dots with the experiments, which are the open dots. And you can see that the description, this mathematical description I showed you here, actually captures quite well this tunability of both the center frequency, that's what you see in blue, and the band gap size, that's what you see in red. And so the explanation is a combination of the fact that you are inducing these pre-stresses and you're changing the geometry of the membrane itself. I don't know if that answers.
No, that's clear. Thanks. And maybe just because you are on the right slide, intuitively, why the quality factor is going down?
So I knew this was going to come. So the quality factor is the sticky point. I think in order to be really effective for RF systems, if you really want to integrate these in saw-body devices for 5G, 6G telecommunication and whatnot, we need much better quality factor than what you see on this slide. So the reason it's multifold. I think one thing I want to stress is that when we were this paper, we weren't trying to optimize for losses, for reduction of losses, or for quality factor. There are many intrinsic reasons in the thickness, the material choices, the properties and uniformity of the membrane themselves. Factor, and
we seem to have
material defects in fabrication, as well as just geometrical considerations in terms of the deformation with increased voltage, because you're effectively deforming this membrane, and that the internal stresses are acting against the quality factor per se. I think if we wanted to have higher quality factor, we need to optimize the membranes. And I think this prior work done, for example, on graphene suspended membrane, I find it extremely promising. The quality factors, by the way, reported by Chen et al. Are much higher, but they only work for a single resonator. So they weren't able to fabricate an array, like a metamaterial in the sense of a periodic array of resonators. So it's really just a single point. I think if we could extend this work, say, of 2D materials, membrane materials, graphene, or other 2D materials in an array sense, I think we would be hitting the sweet spot in terms of quality factor and RF performance.
Okay, thanks.
So anyone else wants to ask a question to Chiara? Please come forward with your question.
Well, maybe I have one more general question. So when we try to combine static and dynamic, or not combine, but tune static and dynamic properties of metamaterial, can we simply have two structures, one which gives us the static, let's say, a supporting structure, and one which gives us the dynamics? What's wrong with that strategy?
You know, this is something we discussed. Like, think about some intertwined, metamaterials that that somehow would decouple static and dynamic properties. The thing is that it's a little tricky, because if you have very high, the realization of them, if you could figure out a way to do that by decoupling, say I have a lattice that supports static load bearing, and I have another one that supports acoustic, and somehow convince the dynamic informations, like the structure, vibration of sound, to travel in one of the lattices and not the other, that would be a winner. It's just very hard, right? Because the problem is that if you have a very steep truss, it works almost like a highway for preferential passage of all stresses, whether it's static or dynamic, right? So you need to figure out a way to say, well, no, so sound over here, or vibrations over here, and static stresses over there. And it's not so easy. I think that was the attempt in this project that I'm showing here in designing that, and it's certainly maybe something to think about. It's just intuitively it's hard to design it.
So we were, of course, when we hold the tuning fork in our hand, it works because the handle is put on a node of the mode we are observing. So such design will be finding the nodes and attaching the structure exactly at the nodes, and that will also improve the quality factors. It will not destroy the quality factors and all that.
That's very true. Yes, that's one strategic way to do it. And the question will be, if that's the only place that has to be load bearing, or whether you need the entire structure per se, without dangling elements and systems to support load. So it's again linked to the specific needs, right? And we were really trying to solve the problem of our neuroscience colleagues in saying, can you make a window, like they're doing that for animal studies. I didn't want to put the gross picture of predators there, so I avoided that. But the point is that they're removing, for example, in rats and primates, they're removing part of the skull, and they do this to stimulate the brain, right? For example, for some of the primates that have been induce some damage in the spinal cord, to see if you can stimulate the brain to recover activity. And the problem they have is that once you do these interventions, by the way, they're done also in human. My own grandfather had the same thing done, in which I removed a part of the skull. The problem is that the part of the skull with the bone removal, it's really sensitive to inflammation and also not protected from impact. Right? So you want to have something that, in its entirety has quasi-static load-bearing support, so that you can scratch your head without inducing brain damage. But at the same time, you want that window to remain completely transparent so that you reduce the scattering from bone. And so in that type of constraints, envisioning tuning forks that are suspended somewhere, it's very hard. I think it's a design constraint I think we just need better design tools. I'm sorry to hammer always on the same point, but I think really better design tools are going to surpass our intuition, and that has to be the natural way we can design advanced materials that truly fulfill application constraints.
Thank you.
So do we have any more questions? So I've got a question which is a naive question. How can you scale up all your devices, to the geophysics scale? And I mean,
I voluntarily stayed away from that, Sebastian. I think the short answer is I don't know. I mean, I think the seismic geophysics scale is a very interesting one, and it is certainly an exciting one in terms of looking at scalability of these metamaterials concepts. Can we really use them pragmatically and practically to stop earthquakes? I don't know. I don't have intuition.
Because, for instance, the Swiss roll resonators, which you have in plates, so they lead to very low frequency modes, so very low frequency stop bands. And so obviously now you have to change, now it would be like some kind of granular medium, you have published some papers on this, so perhaps it will change the physics. Could you comment on this? I mean, how do you see things, for instance, scaling up these kinds of Swiss rolls resonators?
I think the scalability per se is doable. I mean, I am 100% convinced that there are engineering designs that can fulfill similar responses, at least if you confine our worries to small strains, so small displacements of these resonators at the geophysical scales. How to do it here is that we really, again, I go back to the design problem. We really need to be better at design for heterogeneous nonlinear media around the resonators and for the resonators themselves. I think the geophysical scales, I and many others have published papers in this aspect, but we've tended to simplify soil to being either a linear elastic medium, and that's our approach, or sometimes granular media, but soil is a lot more complex, it's a lot more nonlinear, and the design of scaled resonators, if you truly want to use them in application, they have to account for these complexities that you're going to encounter in the civil engineering constraints. I also worry about amplitudes, because unless we're really worrying about very small displacements, that would be earthquakes that anyway don't do any damage. If you're thinking about the San Andreas fault that is sitting under my house in the LA area, and you're waiting for the big one, I think we're not going to be able to design these systems to survive such large displacement and high energy of signal propagation. Maybe for protecting very accurate equipment, we're thinking about, with one of the postdocs in my group, Brittany Lydon, Brittany has been looking at, for example, LIGO applications. And I think if you're trying to reduce really tiny linear elastic oscillations, those kind of large-scale systems can work. I think for seismic, I'm not sure we can truly scale them up to dimensions we need.
Yeah, that would be, for more or less for, let's say, some ambient noise, or noise, ground vibrations due to traffic, to train and so on.
Yeah, that can be done. I think that can be done, and that could be done to protect, say, LIGO type equipment were very sensitive to noise, or maybe protect archaeological sites. But I think that can be done. We can do it by accounting for the complexity of soil that is surrounding the specific site we are thinking of protecting.
Okay, so are there any more questions? Anyone wishes to use this great opportunity to ask a question to Chiara?
Oh, maybe. So can I ask how do we get access to the library that you are?
It's coming. We're gonna put it online. It's just that it's work in progress. Bear with me. It's actually really hard to make a database with such large data content available to everybody. This is part of, by the way, it's a multi-university consortium that's supported by the NSF from a cyber infrastructure grant that's led by Duke. Professor Kate Brinson is the lead PI, and she has a vision to create these metamaterials and in general material database repositories. There is an infancy. In its infancy, it exists, and I'm happy to share the link for it. Although I'm shy because it's not working properly yet, and we didn't upload our metamaterial database. But we're troubleshooting. We're on it, and we're hoping that in the next few months you're going to see at least a preliminary version of it. It's just from a software front-end side, it's very complicated, especially for an experimental group such as mine. So we're on it. Just stay tuned.
Okay, good.
Okay, so let us thank our speaker again for this wonderful talk. And let me take this opportunity to remind you that next week it will be a talk on bioacoustics by Professor Mark Olderide from Bristol University. So it will be a talk on bats and moths, so living creatures, and their link to acoustic metamaterials. So I hope to see you in 1 week. And thank you very much again, Professor Daraio, for this really inspirational talk. Wonderful. It was just great.
Thank you. Thanks, Boga, and everybody for organizing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys. See you next week.
Bye.